Sarah Martinez stared at the job posting on her laptop screen for the third time that morning. The coffee in her mug had gone cold, but she barely noticed. The advertisement was simple and straightforward: event assistant needed, 1 day only, immediate start, competitive pay. After 6 months of unemployment, even a single day of work felt like a gift from heaven. The phone rang within minutes of her applying online. The voice on the other end belonged to Marcus Chen, who introduced himself as the event coordinator for a high-profile corporate function happening that weekend. His tone was professional but warm, and Sarah found herself relaxing as they spoke. "I'll be honest with you, Sarah," Marcus said, his voice carrying a slight accent that suggested he had traveled far to be where he was. "This event is crucial for our company. We're hosting potential investors, and everything needs to be perfect. The person we hire needs to be reliable, professional, and able to think on their feet." Sarah gripped the phone tighter. She had worked in event management before losing her job at a marketing firm, and she knew she could handle whatever they threw at her. "I have experience with corporate events, and I understand the importance of making a good impression on investors. What exactly would my responsibilities be?" Marcus explained that she would be helping with guest registration, coordinating with catering staff, and ensuring the event ran smoothly from start to finish. The pay was generous for a single day's work, more than she had made in some full weeks at her previous job. They arranged to meet the next morning at the hotel where the event would take place. That evening, Sarah carefully selected her outfit. She chose a navy blue dress that looked professional but not too formal, paired with comfortable but stylish shoes. She had learned from experience that event work meant being on your feet for hours. She reviewed her resume one more time, even though this was supposedly just temporary work. Something in Marcus's voice had suggested this event was more important than he was letting on. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel 15 minutes early. The lobby was already buzzing with activity as hotel staff prepared for what was clearly going to be a major event. She spotted Marcus immediately, a tall man in his 40s with graying temples and an expensive suit. He was speaking animatedly with someone on his phone while gesturing toward a team of workers setting up registration tables. When Marcus saw her approaching, he ended his call quickly and walked over with a smile that seemed both relieved and nervous. "Sarah, thank you for coming. I have to admit, you came highly recommended." Sarah raised an eyebrow. She hadn't provided any references yet. "Recommended by whom?" Marcus's smile faltered slightly. "Actually, let me be completely honest with you. We did some background checking after you applied. Your former supervisor at Davidson Marketing spoke very highly of your work. We needed to be sure we were bringing in the right person." The revelation surprised Sarah, but she wasn't entirely uncomfortable with it. In today's world, background checks were common, even for temporary positions. What struck her as odd was the thoroughness of it all for what was supposed to be a one-day job. Marcus led her through the hotel, pointing out different areas where the event would take place. The main ballroom was being transformed into an elegant space with round tables, a stage, and what looked like very expensive audio-visual equipment. Catering staff were setting up stations with fine china and crystal glasses. This was clearly not a simple corporate lunch. "The guest list is about 200 people, Marcus explained as they walked. "These are high net worth individuals, venture capitalists, and some very influential business leaders. Our company, Quantum Innovations, has developed some groundbreaking technology, and today's presentation could change everything for us." Sarah nodded, taking mental notes. She had worked similar events before, though perhaps not with quite this level of importance attached to them. "What kind of technology?" Marcus paused at the entrance to a smaller conference room where several people in suits were setting up laptops and testing projection equipment. "Renewable energy solutions. Specifically, we've developed a way to make solar energy storage dramatically more efficient and cost-effective. If today goes well, we'll have the funding to scale up production and potentially revolutionize how the world thinks about clean energy." The weight of responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders. This wasn't just about serving drinks and checking names off a list. This was about helping ensure that a potentially world-changing technology got the support it needed. She found herself genuinely excited about being part of something meaningful, even if it was only for one day. Marcus introduced her to the rest of the team. There was Jennifer, the catering manager who had worked with Marcus before and seemed to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. David handled the technical aspects of the presentation and spoke in rapid bursts about projectors and backup systems. Lisa managed public relations and was constantly checking her phone for updates from various media outlets. Sarah will be our point person for guest services, Marcus announced to the group. She'll handle registration and make sure our VIP guests have everything they need. As the morning progressed, Sarah threw herself into the work. She familiarized herself with the guest list, noting which attendees were marked as particularly important. She coordinated with hotel security about the arrival protocols for some of the more prominent guests. She double-checked that the registration materials were properly organized and that the welcome packets contained all the necessary information. Around noon, Marcus pulled her aside. "I have to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." Sarah's stomach tightened. Had she made a mistake already? Of course. What is it? Would you be interested in more than just today's work? I mean, if today goes well and we secure the funding we're hoping for, we're going to need to expand our team significantly. People with your skills and professionalism are exactly what we'll need. The question caught Sarah off guard. She had applied for a one-day position, nothing more. The possibility of ongoing work hadn't even occurred to her. Yes, I would definitely be interested. But let's see how today goes first. Marcus nodded, but Sarah caught something in his expression that suggested he was already thinking several steps ahead. Fair enough. But I have a good feeling about today, and I have an even better feeling about you being part of our team. As the afternoon wore on, guests began arriving for the evening event. Sarah positioned herself at the registration table and watched as some of the most successful people in the business world walked through the hotel's front doors. She recognized a few faces from magazine covers and news programs. The energy in the room was electric, and she found herself caught up in the excitement of it all. Then, around 4 o'clock, something unexpected happened. A woman in an elegant black dress approached the registration table, and, when she gave her name, Sarah couldn't find it on the guest list. The woman insisted she had been personally invited by Marcus, but there was no record of her registration. Sarah excused herself and went to find Marcus, who was in deep conversation with a group of potential investors near the demonstration area. When she explained the situation, his face went completely pale. "Elizabeth Morrison is here," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know her?" Marcus looked around nervously, as if checking to see who might be listening. "She's the CEO of Morrison Energy Solutions. They're our biggest competitor, and if she's here..." He didn't finish the sentence, but Sarah could see the worry in his eyes. "What should I do?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he looked at Sarah with an intensity she hadn't seen from him before. "I need to trust you with something, Sarah. Something that goes far beyond what we originally discussed." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever was about to happen, she sensed that her simple one-day job was about to become something much more complicated. "What do you mean?" "Elizabeth Morrison isn't just here as a competitor checking out the competition. We have reason to believe she's here to steal our technology. And if that happens, everything we've worked for, everything that could help solve the world's energy problems, could be lost." The hotel lobby suddenly felt much larger and more dangerous than it had just moments before. Sarah realized that her temporary job had just thrust her into the middle of what felt like corporate espionage. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Sarah's mind raced as she processed Marcus's words. Corporate espionage seemed like something from movies, not something that happened in real life to people like her. Yet here she was, standing in an elegant hotel lobby, being told that the woman waiting at the registration table might be there to steal potentially world-changing technology. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Sarah asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Marcus glanced around again, then guided Sarah to a quiet corner near a large decorative plant. First, register her normally. We can't raise suspicions by refusing her entry. But I need you to keep an eye on her throughout the evening. Note who she talks to, where she goes, if she tries to access any restricted areas. Sarah nodded, though part of her wondered what she had gotten herself into. And if I see something suspicious? Find me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. Marcus paused, studying her face. Sarah, I want you to know that I understand this is far beyond what you signed up for. If you're not comfortable with this, I completely understand. We can pay you for today and you can leave right now. The offer hung in the air between them. Sarah thought about her empty bank account, her stack of unpaid bills, and the 6 months of rejection letters from potential employers. But she also thought about what Marcus had told her about their technology and how it could help address climate change. More than that, she found herself genuinely angry at the idea that someone might steal the innovative work that Marcus and his team had clearly poured their hearts into. I'm staying, she said firmly. But I want to understand exactly what we're dealing with. What makes you think she's here to steal your technology? Marcus looked relieved but still worried. 3 weeks ago, someone attempted to hack into our servers. We traced it back to a company that does industrial espionage work, and we discovered that Morrison Energy Solutions had hired them. Yesterday, we learned that Elizabeth Morrison herself was planning to attend today's event under a false pretense. What kind of false pretense? She's claiming to represent a venture capital firm that doesn't exist. The address on her registration form leads to an empty office building. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. We've been developing this solar storage technology for 3 years. If she gets access to our presentation materials or, worse, if she somehow gets into our demonstration equipment. Sarah understood. In the competitive world of technology development, being first to market could mean the difference between success and failure, between getting the funding to change the world and watching someone else do it with stolen ideas. All right, Sarah said. Let's go register Ms. Morrison. They walked back to the registration table where Elizabeth Morrison was waiting patiently, scrolling through her phone. Up close, Sarah could see that she was probably in her late 40s, with sharp eyes and an expensive handbag that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month when she was employed. I'm so sorry for the delay, Sarah said with her best customer service smile. There was a small mix-up with our system, but we have you all set now. Elizabeth smiled back, but Sarah noticed that the smile didn't reach her eyes. No problem at all. I'm looking forward to the presentation. I've heard wonderful things about quantum innovations. As Sarah handed over the registration packet and name badge, she noticed Elizabeth's manicured fingers and expensive jewelry. This was clearly someone accustomed to wealth and power. Sarah found herself wondering what would drive someone who obviously already had significant success to risk everything by potentially stealing from others. The reception begins at 6, and the main presentation starts at 7:30, Sarah explained. Is there anything specific you'd like to know about this evening's agenda? Actually, yes, Elizabeth said, leaning in slightly. I understand there will be a demonstration of the technology. Will attendees have an opportunity to examine the equipment up close? Sarah felt a chill. Marcus had specifically mentioned concern about someone gaining access to their demonstration equipment. The demonstration will be part of the main presentation. I believe there will be a question and answer session afterward, but I'm not sure about hands-on examination. You might want to speak with our technical team during the reception. Elizabeth nodded and thanked Sarah before walking away toward the elevators. Sarah watched her go, noting that Elizabeth immediately pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah continued to handle registration for arriving guests while keeping one eye on Elizabeth Morrison. She watched as Elizabeth mingled during the cocktail reception, engaging in conversation with various attendees. To any casual observer, Elizabeth looked like just another potential investor networking at a corporate event. But Sarah began to notice patterns. Elizabeth seemed particularly interested in talking to Quantum Innovations employees. She asked detailed questions about the company's research and development process. Most concerning, Sarah saw her attempt to engage David, the technical specialist, in conversation near the room where the demonstration equipment was set up. Around 7 o'clock, Sarah approached Marcus with an update. "She's been asking a lot of questions about your technology and your development process. And she tried to get David to show her the demonstration setup." Marcus frowned. "What did David say?" "He told her that all technical information would be covered in the main presentation." But she seemed frustrated by that answer. Good. David knows to be careful. Marcus checked his watch. "The presentation starts in 30 minutes. That's when we'll be most vulnerable. Once we start demonstrating the technology publicly, she'll have access to a lot of information." Sarah had an idea. "What if I offered to give her a personal tour or something? Keep her occupied and away from the main demonstration?" Marcus considered this. "That could work, but it's also risky. If she realizes you're deliberately keeping her away from something, she might become suspicious." "Let me try a different approach," Sarah suggested. "What if I engage her in conversation about her investment interests? If she's really here under false pretenses, she might slip up and reveal something that exposes her real agenda." Marcus looked impressed. "That's actually brilliant. Just be careful not to make it seem like an interrogation." Sarah found Elizabeth standing near the bar, nursing a glass of white wine and checking her phone again. She approached with what she hoped was a casual, friendly demeanor. "Ms. Morrison? I'm Sarah, we met at registration earlier. I wanted to check if you've been enjoying the reception." Elizabeth looked up from her phone with that same smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh yes, it's been very informative. This is quite an impressive operation that Quantum Innovations has built. Are you familiar with their previous work in renewable energy?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious about how much research Elizabeth had done. "Somewhat," Elizabeth replied carefully. "I'm always interested in innovative approaches to energy storage. The market potential is enormous." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. I've learned so much just from working with them today. The technical aspects are fascinating, though I have to admit a lot of it goes over my head." "Do you have a technical background yourself?" For just a moment, Elizabeth's composed facade slipped. I work with technical teams regularly in my investment work." It was a vague answer, and Sarah sensed an opportunity to push gently. "That must be helpful when evaluating potential investments. Do you focus on energy sector companies specifically?" Elizabeth hesitated again. "I work with a variety of technology companies. Clean energy is certainly an area of interest." Sarah was about to ask another question when the lights in the reception area dimmed slightly and Marcus's voice came over the sound system, inviting everyone to move into the main ballroom for the presentation. As the crowd began to migrate toward the doors, Sarah noticed Elizabeth hang back, allowing most of the other guests to enter ahead of her. Instead of following the crowd, Elizabeth walked toward the restrooms. Sarah waited a moment, then followed at a distance. But, instead of entering the ladies' room, Elizabeth turned down a corridor that led toward the hotel's conference rooms and, Sarah realized with alarm, toward the room where Quantum Innovations had set up their equipment earlier. Sarah's heart began to pound. This was it. Elizabeth was making her move while everyone else was distracted by the presentation. Sarah pulled out her phone to text Marcus, but realized he would already be on stage and unable to respond. She was going to have to handle this situation herself. Taking a deep breath, Sarah followed Elizabeth down the corridor. She could hear Marcus's voice beginning the presentation in the ballroom behind her, talking about the future of renewable energy and the breakthrough his company had achieved. Meanwhile, she was walking into what felt like a real-life thriller, unsure of what she would find around the corner. When Sarah reached the end of the corridor, she saw Elizabeth standing outside the conference room where the equipment was stored, looking at her phone. As Sarah watched, Elizabeth approached the door and tried the handle. It was locked, But Elizabeth didn't give up. Instead, she pulled something small from her purse, something that looked very much like electronic lockpicking device. Sarah realized she was witnessing an actual crime in progress. Her temporary job helping with an event had somehow led her to this moment where she was the only thing standing between a potential thief and technology that could help save the planet. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Sarah's hands trembled as she watched Elizabeth Morrison work on the conference room door lock. The device in Elizabeth's hands was definitely not something a legitimate investor would carry around. Sarah knew she had to act, but confronting someone engaged in what appeared to be corporate espionage felt far beyond anything she had ever imagined herself doing. She pulled out her phone and quickly typed a message to Marcus, "Emergency. Elizabeth Morrison attempting to break into equipment room. Need help now." But, as she hit send, she realized that Marcus was likely in the middle of his presentation and might not see the message for several minutes. Elizabeth was making progress with the lock. Sarah could hear faint clicking sounds as the device worked on the electronic mechanism. In just moments, Elizabeth would gain access to the room containing Quantum Innovations' most sensitive technology. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward. "Excuse me, Ms. Morrison. Can I help you with something?" Elizabeth spun around, startled. For a split second, her composed mask slipped completely, revealing a look of panic. But she recovered quickly, sliding the lockpicking device back into her purse with practiced ease. "Oh, hello, Sarah. I was just looking for the ladies' room. I seem to have gotten turned around." Sarah glanced pointedly at the door Elizabeth had been working on, which clearly had Conference Room C labeled on it. "The restrooms are back toward the main ballroom. This area is restricted to hotel and event staff only." "Of course," Elizabeth said, but she made no move to leave. Instead, she studied Sarah with a calculating look. "You know, Sarah, you seem like an intelligent young woman. I imagine working these temporary event jobs doesn't pay very well." Sarah felt a chill as she realized where this conversation was heading. "I'm sorry?" Elizabeth stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I work for a company that values information. We're willing to pay very well for certain kinds of insights. About companies like Quantum Innovations, their technology, their business plans." The offer hung in the air between them. Sarah realized that Elizabeth was trying to recruit her as an inside source of information. The woman clearly thought that a temporary worker struggling financially might be willing to sell out her employer for the right price. "What kind of insights?" Sarah asked, playing along while her mind raced with what to do next. Elizabeth smiled, apparently thinking she had found a willing accomplice. "Technical specifications, financial projections, client lists. The kind of information that helps companies make informed competitive decisions." "And what would that kind of information be worth? For the right information about Quantum Innovations' solar storage technology?" "We could start with $50,000. Sarah felt like she had been punched in the stomach. $50,000 was more money than she had made in her entire previous year of employment. It was enough to pay off her debts, get back on her feet, maybe even go back to school. For a moment, she understood exactly how corporate espionage worked by finding people desperate enough to compromise their integrity. "That's a lot of money," Sarah said carefully. Elizabeth nodded enthusiastically. "And that's just the beginning. A long-term arrangement could be worth significantly more." She paused, studying Sarah's expression. "I can see you're interested. Why don't we discuss this somewhere more private?" Sarah realized that Elizabeth was trying to lead her away from the conference room, probably to continue their conversation while also abandoning her attempt to break in. But Sarah also knew that someone had to stay and protect the equipment until Marcus could respond to her message. "Actually," Sarah said, thinking quickly, "if I'm going to consider something like this, I'd need to know more about what you're really looking for. What specifically about their technology interests your company?" Elizabeth's eyes lit up. She clearly thought she had successfully turned Sarah into an asset. "The energy storage breakthrough they're announcing tonight. My company has been working on similar technology, but quantum innovations appears to have solved some key problems that we haven't. If we could understand their approach. You mean steal their approach, Sarah said quietly. Elizabeth's expression hardened slightly. I prefer to think of it as competitive intelligence. This is how business works in the technology sector, Sarah. Companies gather information about their competitors all the time. By breaking into locked rooms? By using all available resources to stay competitive. Elizabeth's tone became more urgent. Look, Quantum Innovations is a small company that won't be able to capitalize on this breakthrough properly. My company has the resources to bring this technology to market faster and more effectively. In the long run, we'd be helping more people gain access to clean energy solutions. Sarah found the rationalization disgusting, but she kept her expression neutral. How would this work? If I were to help you, I mean. Elizabeth pulled out a small device that looked like a high-end smartphone. This device can copy data from computers, servers, even demonstration equipment. All you would need to do is connect it to their systems for a few minutes. Sarah stared at the device, realizing that Elizabeth had come prepared for full-scale industrial espionage. This wasn't just about gathering publicly available information, this was about stealing proprietary data that Quantum Innovations had spent years developing. You want me to plug that into their computers? Just for a few minutes during the networking period after the presentation. Everyone will be distracted, and you'll have access as event staff. Elizabeth's voice took on an almost pleading tone. Sarah, this is a life-changing opportunity for you. $50,000 for a few minutes' work. Sarah looked at the device, then back at Elizabeth. And what happens to Marcus and his team? To their company? Elizabeth shrugged. They'll still have their technology. This just allows my company to develop competing solutions more efficiently. It was a lie, and Sarah knew it. If Elizabeth's company stole Quantum Innovations' breakthrough and brought it to market first, it could destroy Marcus's company completely. All the years of research, all the hope for creating meaningful change in the world, would be lost. Sarah made her decision. I need a minute to think about this. Of course, Elizabeth said, relaxing slightly. But we don't have much time. The presentation will be ending soon, and we need to act tonight if we're going to act at all. Sarah nodded and pulled out her phone, pretending to check for messages. Instead, she quickly opened her camera app and activated the video recording function. You know what? I think I'm interested. But I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're asking me to do. Elizabeth smiled broadly. Smart girl. Okay, here's exactly what we need. For the next 5 minutes, Elizabeth laid out a detailed plan for stealing Quantum Innovations technology. She explained how the data copying device worked, which systems Sarah should target, and how they would transfer the stolen information. She even offered to increase the payment to $75,000 if Sarah could also provide access to financial projections and investor contact lists. Throughout the conversation, Sarah's phone camera captured everything: Elizabeth's face, her voice, her detailed confession of the planned theft. Sarah felt sick to her stomach listening to it all, but she knew she needed as much evidence as possible. Finally, Elizabeth finished explaining the plan. So, are you ready to change your life, Sarah? Sarah looked at her phone screen, ensuring the video was still recording, then looked back at Elizabeth. Actually, Elizabeth, I think you're the one whose life is about to change. Elizabeth's confident expression faltered. What do you mean? Sarah held up her phone, showing the recording screen. I mean that I've just recorded you confessing to planning corporate espionage, offering bribes, and attempting to steal proprietary technology. And I'm about to send this video to the police. The color drained from Elizabeth's face. For a moment, she stood frozen in shock. Then, moving faster than Sarah had expected, Elizabeth lunged forward and tried to grab the phone. Sarah jumped backward, clutching the phone to her chest. Security! Help! Someone call security! Elizabeth made another grab for the phone, but this time Sarah was ready. She dodged to the side and ran toward the main ballroom, shouting for help as loudly as she could. Behind her, she heard Elizabeth's high heels clicking rapidly on the hotel's marble floor as she gave chase. Sarah reached the ballroom doors just as Marcus was finishing his presentation to thunderous applause. She burst through the doors, still clutching her phone and shouting for security. The elegant business event erupted into chaos as hotel security responded to Sarah's calls for help. Marcus saw her immediately and jumped down from the stage, pushing through the crowd of confused investors and attendees. "Sarah! What happened?" he called out as hotel security officers moved past him toward the doors. "I caught her," Sarah gasped, still trying to catch her breath. "Elizabeth Morrison. I caught her trying to steal your technology, and I have it all on video." Marcus stared at her in amazement as the reality of what had happened began to sink in. The woman he had hired for a simple one-day event job had just potentially saved his company and his life's work. But, as the hotel security officers returned to the ballroom, Sarah realized that their adventure was far from over. "Sir," one of the security officers addressed Marcus. "The woman in question appears to have left the building. But, we'll need to speak with you and your witness about what happened here tonight." Sarah looked around the ballroom full of potential investors, all of whom were now staring at her with curiosity and concern. She realized that her testimony about what she had witnessed might be crucial not only for protecting quantum innovations but for ensuring that Elizabeth Morrison faced consequences for her attempted theft. What had started as a desperate attempt to earn money for a single day of work had become something much more significant. Sarah had become a key figure in protecting innovation that could help address one of the world's most pressing problems. But, she also knew that Elizabeth Morrison and whoever she worked for wouldn't give up easily. The real test was just beginning. The next 3 hours passed in a whirlwind of police interviews, security consultations, and intense discussions among the quantum innovations team. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, repeatedly telling her story to different officials while the video evidence she had captured was analyzed and verified. Detective Rodriguez, the lead investigator assigned to the case, was particularly impressed with Sarah's quick thinking. "Ms. Martinez, your evidence is solid. This video clearly shows attempted corporate espionage and bribery. We've already issued a warrant for Ms. Morrison's arrest." Marcus sat across from Sarah in the hotel's small business center, where they had relocated after the ballroom was cleared of guests. The investors had been remarkably understanding about the evening's dramatic turn, with several expressing even greater interest in supporting a company that had clearly developed technology valuable enough to steal. "Sarah, I don't know how to thank you," Marcus said, running his hands through his hair. "If Elizabeth had succeeded in stealing our data." "She didn't," Sarah replied firmly. "And now she won't be able to try again." Detective Rodriguez looked up from his notes. "Actually, there's something you both should know. Elizabeth Morrison isn't just a competitor trying to steal technology. She's been under investigation by the FBI for running an industrial espionage ring that targets clean energy companies across the country." Sarah felt a chill. "You mean this wasn't just about your company?" "No. Our investigation suggests she's been systematically targeting innovative companies in the renewable energy sector, stealing their research and selling it to the highest bidder. Some of these companies have gone out of business after their breakthrough technologies mysteriously appeared in products released by larger corporations." Marcus looked stunned. "So we weren't just being paranoid about the security threats?" "Not at all. In fact, your company is the first one where she's been caught in the act. Your employee here just provided us with the breakthrough we needed to build a case against an entire criminal organization." Sarah stared at Detective Rodriguez in disbelief. "You're saying this is bigger than just one person trying to steal technology?" "Much bigger. We believe Morrison has been working with a network of people who infiltrate companies, steal intellectual property, and sell it to competitors. The damage they've done to innovation in the clean energy sector has been enormous." The weight of what Sarah had helped uncover began to sink in. This wasn't just about protecting Marcus's company, it was about protecting an entire industry of people working to solve environmental problems. Detective Rodriguez continued. We'll need your continued cooperation as this case develops, Sarah. Your testimony will be crucial for prosecution. Of course, Sarah agreed without hesitation. Whatever you need. After the detective left, Sarah and Marcus sat alone in the quiet business center. The hotel had largely returned to normal, with late evening guests checking in and the staff cleaning up from the aborted event. So, Marcus said finally, I guess this means your one-day job is officially over. Sarah laughed, suddenly, realizing how exhausted she was. I suppose it is. Though it wasn't exactly what I expected when I applied. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. Actually, I have a proposition for you. Another one-day job? Sarah asked jokingly. Not exactly. Marcus smiled. The truth is, tonight's events have made something very clear to me. Quantum Innovations needs someone like you on our team permanently. Someone who can think quickly under pressure, someone who understands the importance of protecting innovation, someone who can't be bought or intimidated. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a career, Marcus said seriously. We secured major funding tonight, despite everything that happened. In fact, the investors were impressed by how we handled the security threat. We're going to be expanding rapidly over the next year, and we need someone to head up our security and operations department. Sarah stared at him. Marcus, I don't have experience in corporate security. You have something better, integrity and intelligence. Plus, after tonight, you know more about industrial espionage than most security professionals. Marcus leaned forward. Sarah, you saved our company tonight. You saved technology that could help address climate change. That's not something you do by accident. That's something you do because you're exactly the kind of person we need. The offer was tempting beyond anything Sarah had imagined. After months of unemployment and rejection, the possibility of not just a job but a meaningful career felt almost too good to be true. What would the position involve? Marcus smiled. Developing security protocols to protect our research, coordinating with law enforcement on threats like we faced tonight, and helping other clean energy companies protect themselves from similar attacks. Detective Rodriguez mentioned that the FBI might want to work with companies like ours to help catch industrial espies. You could be our liaison for that effort. Sarah thought about everything that had happened over the past day. 24 hours ago, she had been an unemployed woman applying for temporary work just to pay her bills. Now she was being offered the chance to play a role in protecting innovations that could help save the planet. There's something else, Marcus added. The FBI mentioned that they might want to set up a task force to combat industrial espionage in the clean energy sector. They're looking for someone from the private sector to help coordinate between companies and law enforcement. Someone who understands both business operations and investigative work. Someone like me? Exactly like you. Marcus paused. Sarah, what happened tonight wasn't just luck. You saw something suspicious, you investigated it, you gathered evidence, and you acted to protect something important. Those are exactly the skills we need to fight people like Elizabeth Morrison. Sarah looked around the small business center where they were sitting. Through the windows, she could see the city lights stretching out into the distance. Somewhere out there, Elizabeth Morrison was probably planning her next target. Somewhere out there, other innovative companies were vulnerable to the same kind of attack that had almost succeeded tonight. If I take this position, Sarah said slowly, what would my first assignment be? Marcus grinned. Working with Detective Rodriguez to help the FBI identify other companies that might be targets. Then, helping those companies improve their security before they get hit. So I'd be helping to protect the entire industry? That's the idea. Turn your experience from tonight into expertise that could save dozens of companies and the innovations they're developing. Sarah thought about all the months of job searching, all the rejection letters, all the nights wondering how she was going to pay her bills. Then, she thought about the technology demonstration she had witnessed that evening, and Marcus's explanation of how it could revolutionize clean energy storage. Marcus, when you hired me for this event, did you know any of this was going to happen? Marcus laughed. Absolutely not. I thought I was hiring someone to help register guests and coordinate with catering. I never imagined I was hiring someone who would save our company and possibly help change how the entire industry protects itself. And you're sure about this job offer? Even though my only qualification seems to be accidentally stumbling into corporate espionage? Sarah, in the past day you've shown more dedication to protecting innovation than some people show in entire careers. You risked your own safety to gather evidence against someone trying to steal technology that could help address climate change. That's not an accident. That's character. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Tomorrow, she could go back to job searching, back to temporary work, back to wondering whether she'd be able to make rent. Or she could take a leap of faith and accept a position that would let her continue protecting the kind of innovation the world desperately needed. She turned back to Marcus. When do I start? Marcus's face lit up with relief and excitement. How about Monday? We'll need to set up proper security protocols before Elizabeth Morrison's associates realize she's been caught. Associates? Detective Rodriguez thinks she was working with other people. Tonight might have been just the beginning. Sarah felt a familiar surge of determination. Then, we'd better get to work. As they shook hands on the deal, Sarah realized that her life had changed completely in the span of a single day. What had started as a desperate attempt to earn money for one day of work had become the foundation of a new career fighting to protect innovation that could help save the world. 6 months later, Sarah was leading a joint task force between the FBI and clean energy companies across the country. Elizabeth Morrison and her network had been successfully prosecuted, and their conviction had sent a strong message to other would-be industrial spies. More importantly, dozens of companies were now better protected against similar attacks, allowing them to focus on developing the technologies the world needed. Marcus had been right about one thing: what happened that night hadn't been an accident. Sarah had found her calling in protecting innovation, and she had found it because she had been willing to do the right thing even when it would have been easier and more profitable to do otherwise. The one-day job that had changed everything had taught Sarah that sometimes the most important work you do is work you never expected to be doing. And sometimes the most significant moments in your life happen when you're just trying to make it through one more day.